Well, hello there, you beautiful souls.
Oh, hope you've been having a great day. Happy October. Another month, Q4 2025. It's exciting. And I'm excited to give this little message. So, it's pretty funny. I feel like there's always big shifts around my birthday, which technically is tomorrow. Um, and just going through the Rolodex of journals, unpacking these different spiritual experiences. This one was really interesting. The awakening of the gut. Now, this is the final of kind of like the three primary awakenings that go down for the liberation of the soul, of enlightenment. And it's a pathway that not few walk upon, because I just feel like it's not really talked about. But every person of notoriety that's actually been through and is considered, a guru, a teacher, all these different things, like they go through this. And I went along this journey really unbeknownst to any and all of it for the most part. A lot of my spiritual search really just started because I wanted an escape. I wanted to get out. I was trying to, you know, I envisioned enlightenment kind of being like I can just phase out of this reality and I'm done. All right, cool, I'm out. But no, that's just one unfoldment of many that it goes down. But when it comes to the awakening of the mind, the awakening of the heart, and the awakening of the gut, they're the three kind of keys to start the engine of the spiritual path to really come closer to God. And yes, you can have all these experiences out of order. I guess you'd say a lot of people experience the psychedelics. We talked about this in the Awakening of the Heart, where they experience the oneness and the interconnectedness of everything. But this is the natural progression of really liberating yourself from the identification and the influence of the horse to coming to really understand what everything is. And in this awakening in the gut, it leads you into putting it all together with spirit and what it all means. Um, yeah, so I guess we'll just dive into it. The awakening in the gut is the longest. And I did a little teaser last time saying that this was really the experience of dying before you die. And in a lot of biblical text, it's written as the fear of God, kind of going through the valley of the shadows of death. And it checks out. Those ancient descriptions check out fully in to the most of anything I've ever experienced. So, got my notes. So, we'll be diving through these today. Now, when it comes to it, the awakening of the mind, just for a time frame of things, happened July 25th, 2017. The awakening of the heart arose September 17th, 2017. And the awakening of the gut really kickstarted December 29th, 2017. Um, after the who am I, what am I questions were answered and experienced, I was discombobulated. There was a lot that really shifted and changed in my own experience. Things were, somewhat dissociated. I was in this very like baby Buddhahood phase. Everything was pretty whimsical. Life became very trippy. There was no transition in between waking state and dreams. I was pretty lost. And that aspect of the mind, especially the way that I grew up and just, the pal, my own best friend, losing the attachment to the mind, although it did feel like home, it was one of those things that was like, wow, I didn't realize how much of like an intimate relationship it was. And with the awakening of the heart, having that, knowing that everything is love and that God is the witness behind all of our witnessing, it made me feel full, but I still felt pretty hollow. And I explained this in the last video, if you haven't checked that one out, with the awakening of the heart. I was going through this, energetic shift. I was still filling up my cup. I was entering a new orbital and field of energy, and I didn't really know what was going on. Again, wasn't really reading. I don't really read that much. There's a few different books on like Qigong and stuff that I really dove deep into, but I couldn't find anything in terms of resources or anyone that was talking about this stuff. So I really had no idea what I was going through. this process has always been a trial by fire for me, so I can help teach it. And that's, again, a lot of the inspiration for these videos, so people don't get so lost in the sauce, so to speak. And I was really just chewing on all these things. I was like, okay, so I'm not God, but a part of God. I'm a witness to awareness. My beingness is default in that pureness of just inner stillness. But really, what is life? What am I? What is my role here? What does the fullness of this experience even mean now that these aspects in which I held so tightly to dropped, that the borders between myself and others was dissolved, that I had that union and connectivity. And then also, while diving deep into these inquiries, being faced with the very real reality that no one understands what's going on. No one can, I can't talk to anyone about this. So I was incredibly connected yet alone. Things amplified in the sense of still norming, going through, the regular job. And at this point, um, mentoring and teaching had ended, and I was really transitioning into my own job and my own business. So I was still diving deep into these questions of what is awareness? What up, yo? Um, and what is illusion? What is being? What is life? If I am stillness, if I am the presence, what does it mean for me to fall in love with this again? And really, I don't want to say like embody, but to really be that in which I experienced. So I was in this baby Buddhahood phase where I was still really learning how to walk, learning how to navigate things. And what I mentioned earlier in terms of life becoming really trippy, I started to experience dream in the waking state as feeling the same. Whenever I would go to sleep, it would be like I'd lay my head down on the pillow and then I'd be sitting up in the dream. I was starting to see my body at this point before and after sleep. Like right as I was going to sleep, I was almost like walking around in my apartment. And it became so, I would say, dissociative that I was just kind of blurring. It was skipping through time. Like I was in a very whimsical mode, still very grounded. I have a great poker face, so you can never tell what's really going on internally. But it was one of those aspects where I was completely just lost. I was a balloon in the sky. And the only thing that I could really hold on to was my questions of just constantly unpacking what is consciousness? What is this sense of self? What does this mean? What is this beingness? What is this stillness? And when it came to December 29th, when the first spontaneous fear of God moment arose, I was outside meditating, and I wasn't even doing any breath work or anything like that. It was just simply being in my meditation, and all of a sudden my heart started palpitating like incredibly fast. And ooh, that's good apple juice. But my heart started palpitating. I started sweating profusely. And although I was just still present and, in the experience of just witnessing, this knowing of fear of death was coming up. And the closest thing that I can explain, if anyone's been skydiving, it's kind of like when you're about to jump out of the plane, but this time it felt like I didn't have a parachute. I wasn't with anyone. And there was a whole energetic activation. I was shaking and I freaked out. I fully, there we go. Come on, Mom, forgot to turn the alarms off. I fully freaked out. Um, like I full on panic. But in similar spiritual experiences like this, I didn't actually know, again, what was going on. And I couldn't really feel my body. So I could feel it freaking out, but I couldn't control it. So my eyes are still closed. It's still a dark space. And this ever increasing energy of you're going to die. And even verbally, thoughts started coming back where it's like, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. And it got to a point where like, I felt like my heart was going to explode. And my heart was faster than it's ever been. It felt like when I was timing it after, like it was close to like 200 beats per minute. I was like trembling, I was shaking, and I was drenched in sweat. So before it reached that kind of point, I took a huge gasp for air. It was just, and again, no idea what had just happened. But this lingering thought of, well, why was I afraid, kind of kept coming through. And I still didn't really know what was going on. Now, again, this is December. It's really only a few months after the awakening of the heart that I jumped right into trying to evoke this experience. And for myself, I thought that I thought that was possible. I thought that I could do it myself. I thought that I could bring forth this state of near death. So I started to dabble in a lot more breath work and things of that nature. And it didn't work, like, at all. um, and it really was just a continuation of trying to unpack this beingness. Well, if I'm this inner stillness, if I'm this window of awareness, if I'm this witness, and this is part of God, and everything is love, well, then why was I scared? Why was I in fear of that? Is fear something that I'm attaching myself to? Is it just another emotion that I'm seeking to hold on to? And I kept going through these different types of just digging, and not leaving any stone unturned. And I kept getting messages throughout this whole process. So, weeks, month goes by, and I was watching a movie with my ex at the time. I don't even remember what movie it was. I didn't write it down. I was looking through the notes. But after the awakening of the heart, I became very emotionally sensitive and like energetically sensitive. So when I was watching this movie, I started to just really feel like the heartstrings were just getting pulled at the character that had, one of the side characters. I should say it wasn't the main character, but it was one of the main characters that had passed. They died in the movie, and it was such a great acting job that, like, and this wasn't like a really popular movie from what I remember. It wasn't a blockbuster film. It wasn't a rememberable actor, but they did such a good job, and it was such a real emotion that they were portraying that was captured that I started crying. And when this happened, I was watching the movie and, tears, and I was kind of like closing my eyes to wipe the tears. And as I closed the eyes, I felt my body getting pulled and lifted. And, now knowing what I know now is like felt like my spirit or my energetic body was just getting pulled and yanked out of my physical. And this experience felt like a few minutes because it felt like I was just getting stretched like putty. And when I had come to it, there was this no, 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 like this really frantic no, 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 please, no, 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 energy behind it. And when that arose again, it was this remembrance of, dang, it happened again. That was one of those spontaneous fear of God, fear of death that arose, and I chickened out. And in real time, it was just like the snap of the finger. It was just the next scene. And that's really what I would say disappointed me. I was really upset with myself after this one. And it was the experience that I needed because it gave me a little bit more grit and that sense of like, no, like, man, F this. Like, I'm better than that. I know that I can drop. Why don't I trust? So it kept coming back to like this, why aren't I trusting life? Why aren't I trusting God? Why aren't I trusting what I know? And after that experience, like months went by, me still trying to evoke that aspect of like, okay, can I bring myself to that threshold of the fear of death? Can I get my heart rate racing enough where I physically feel it again? And the entire time that I was going through this, I was just experiencing little reminders and nudges. And one of the notable ones that, looking through the journals that I wrote down, was I had this really intense message from God on March 11th, 2018. And it was this: it's okay to let go, Peter. What you've experienced, you don't die. You'll be okay. Like, don't attach yourself or don't identify with the fear. So I was continuing to sit with this, just knowing in these, I guess you would say, these downloads and things that were coming through and this reminders. And it was all about just sitting in relation with the sense of being and self, and now kind of consciously unpacking things. And the way that I look at a lot of this experience now in hindsight is that I had experienced a lot really quickly. And it's like if you're trying to bend or shape wood, you have to steam it. It has to get really, really intense. So I was going through these awakenings really, really quickly. But in order for it to hold its shape and also not to snap the wood, it needs to have time to really rest and set. And these first big shakeups and the spontaneous dropping away of, the doorway to fear and of death and all these things, it was a lot. I think just again with just how raw energetically I was and all the different things that were kind of popping off online. Internally, I just needed to have this time for the dust to settle. And as I'm getting these reminders, as I'm sitting with the beingness and the nature of life and the nature of myself and just being the witness and the awareness, different cities and things were coming online, or cities as in gifts. I was starting to see the auras of trees and nature, and it was almost like life was having some of these things physically activate that are abilities and powers, but I kept having to test myself in the knowing that I'm like, this isn't what I came here for. Like, I came here for truth, capital T, above all else. I don't care about these things. And there was moments where I had to consciously choose throughout these few months while stuff was happening of, no, I'm not going to try to develop this skill. Like, that's not what I'm about. I'm not trying to look into this. This isn't what I'm here for. And after that, I had a really beautiful experience. It was July 22nd, 2018. And it was this recognition that even fear itself that I was getting caught up in those previous two experiences of the spontaneous, fear of God moments, that I was holding on to like this assumption that death is somehow a bad thing and that the fear is somehow justified. And then the next day, I ran into this great quote in this lecture by Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. And he was simply mentioning that, fear is a canyon that the mind creates, and the only thing that can cross it is the heart. So it was this really important reframe for me of bringing it back to the essence of what had been experienced with the awakening of the mind and the heart specifically, is that everything is love. And I'd still pushed myself into things of, how much can I push the barriers of consciousness? So I did salvia, and I'll talk about that's its own experience, but I have to mention it briefly because it was this moment of doing something I was scared of and conquering that fear, especially doing it alone. And I had a really trippy experience. It wasn't anything like most people when they talk, because back in high school, salvia was popular and people were like seeing spiders and crazy stuff. But for myself, it was an experience that reminded me, like, don't take life so seriously. Like, you're taking yourself too seriously. You're getting too identified with the search. You're getting too, hard on myself. I was judging myself a lot. So it was very, healing, liberating time. And after that, things, again, continued to kind of amp up the trippiness of how life was operating. And I was still leaning into that aspect of faith and trust. Like, why don't I trust what I know? Why am I running away from the experiences that I know? Like, you can't take it away from me. I know that everything is God. I know that everything is love. I know that I'm not the mind. And any of these assumptions and concepts and identities and beliefs, they're all attached to something that no longer exists. So we roll around to September 30th, and that morning it's being outside, and I start to feel it physically again. The heart starts to race, the body starts to kind of tremble, and it's that same temptation of death. Yet a few days prior, there was a meditation of a deep knowing that all is going to be okay, and remember to no again, bringing back the awakening of the mind experience. And that to me was just like, mwah. So when all of this was going on, there was this deep trust that was established. It was like, okay, if this is how I'm going to go out, then okay, I'm okay with that. And that theme of surrender had been playing forth, and for days, for months, because mind you, the first spontaneous fear of God moment was December 29th, 2017. The second was February 11th, 2018. And that entire spring and summer, I had been sitting in these questions of like, what is holding me back from trusting? What is pulling me back from letting go of surrender? Can I lean deeper into the state of beingness? What is the stillness? What happens when I really just let everything drop? It's not about doing, it's simply being and just letting everything unfold. That when it came to this moment of the bubble arising again, where I felt like everything was going to burst, and I felt like my heart was going to explode, I was just marinating in that it's okay. And the moment that I accepted that, it was like, everything just kind of activated. And it was like this crazy pillar of energy. Yet in the stomach and the gut, it was like such a solid and sturdy mountain and foundation of trust, of just knowing that everything's going to be okay. And similar to past experiences where, I open my eyes and look at life, and it came back to that aspect of oneness where there was no feeling of separation with me in life. It felt as if everything was still really light, like I was living and experiencing and breathing and watching for the first time. Yet there was such a deep knowing. And this is where I would really say that I first actually felt faith and trust. Was it didn't matter what happened. I knew life had always had my back, and that everything was for me. It was just like an instant bodily recognition that everything is arising for a reason, that life is but a beautiful dream, and every aspect of it is a gift. And all of these things were just accepted and downloaded and just like ingrained within the beingness just the moment it happened. And it brought forth that deep reverence and that deep respect. And at the time, I didn't even use the word reverence. I was using the word respect and trust, and that it was earned. That was one of the things that was really interesting about reading through the notes, was just like, oh, wow, like I had to earn God's trust and God's creation, life's trust, by stepping through that fire, that shadow of the valley of death. And it's not actually a valley of death. It's just the shadow of it. Because what we are is eternal, and that eternal knowing was instantly recognized in that moment. That it didn't matter what happened here. Whew. Chill's just talking about it. It didn't matter what happened here. That whatever does go down isn't the end of the journey. And it was just known. It's hard to put into words in that sense, but it was simply known. And when it came down to it, I walked away with a profound sense of interconnectedness. All of that aspects of the previous awakenings kind of came together as one: inner stillness, energy of love and union with all around and within, and a deep knowing that I am beyond this, that life is beyond this. And the reason why, so that's the experience, but the reason why the awakening of the gut represents our spiritual self is because our spiritual self is eternal. There's studies now that have shown that the intuitional hits, the gut feelings that we get, they're outside of time. We're actually tapping into that future self. And that downward triangle peaks and intersects at the gut, the solar plexus. And that representing spirit, it was one of those moments where all the past things that had happened and kind of washed away. And it felt like the journey had finally began. And then, of course, fast forward like a few days after this, I'm sitting in, the experience trying to really wrap my mind around all of it. And this Adyashanti video comes up where he's in an interview with some guy and they're both talking about their awakening of the gut and like this fear of God moment. And I was like, oh, whoa, like that's what that was. And it was funny because his teacher laughed at him and said like, okay, cool. You've done all these things now we can really begin. And that's really how this whole spiritual awakening process felt, is once I was liberated from the mind, once the heart and the soul could taste its source again and that unification with life. And then we look at the gut, getting over the fear of things. Like life just completely shifted gears. It changed. And although there was still aspects of my own embodiment journey of really bringing it all together and healing the body, had little hiccups along my way. And I'm also a human and going through this experience of life. I've made mistakes and corrected them, but it really did help me avoid so many pitfalls and pathways that I see a lot of people experiencing now. It's one of the reasons why I'm talking about all this. If there's any questions, feel free to ask a question. Smash the like if you haven't yet. But it comes back to this knowing that when we actually answer these questions and we really seek, we will find. And that's the importance of this journey of awakening, of liberation, is that when we dive into these primordial questions, who am I? What am I? What is life? What's my role? You will receive an answer. And the aspect of the awakening of the gut, why I think this one's a little tough for people, is because you can't really ever experience it or trust it if you haven't had the first two. It's that trust that is the most fundamental. And that brings it back to the lesson that I received from it, of it being respect. It's earned. I had awakened really quickly when I look at the time of it, from July 25th to 2017 to September 30th, 2018, I had experienced and gone through what people write about. And I only know this now in hindsight, the beauty of it, but I've also been on like a spiritual path consciously since I was 18, 19, and even, my whole life really, my upbringing and just how I was perceiving the world. Yet for the awakening of the gut, it was something that I had to earn. Now, the cool part in hindsight and the way I can explain this is how some people have experienced it is, and at least for my process, how it played out for me to establish that trust in life, so it wasn't just like a one and done, was I had the physical test in the December 29th experience. And I had the etheric or astral experience February 11th. And the unique thing with the physical is, again, the physical body felt like it was dying. The second experience was the energy almost like felt like my soul is getting pulled out of my body. And it like felt like that thread was going to snap. Yet the third experience was kind of, again, like both of them. It was just crazy excited energies. So it was that aspect of, mind, body, and then now spirit. Or technically, let me reframe that. It would have been body, spirit, and then soul for the third one. And yeah, don't got much to say other than that for those ones. I will tell you, like, it's terrifying. Literally feeling like you're dying. But it's that test, and the reason why I know it took so long, or that it took the time it did. It didn't take so long. The fact that it took the time that it did, which was still less than a year, it took months and like daily sits with these deeper truths. Like, why am I fearing? What do I fear? Why am I scared of this? What would happen if everything dropped? And more, you know? Yeah. So I hope this stuff helps. I don't know. I hope this stuff helps with folks, but there's going to be a lot of things unfolding and people are going to be awakening. And I know that there is an importance for everyone to really establish trust and faith. And we can only do that when we give it the opportunity to build. You know, we want to have trust and faith in life, and life is also putting us in the position to earn its trust and respect. To act when you need to act, to do what you know you can, to step up and be better. But if you really want to experience these changes, these shifts, these transformations, you gotta walk through it. How's it going, Bo? What up? Yeah, you have to go through it yourself, and I wish you the best in it. You know, the fear of God is one that it challenges you in a lot of ways, physically, energetically. I think one of the frustrating things that I got caught up in again was just taking it too seriously, was really trying to force the spiritual experience, and to know that it doesn't really mean anything to life if you're forcing it. It's kind of more so a game of what's your first instinct or impulse. Can you keep yourself calm and be present, or are you going to get caught up in like the more fear-driven animalistic nature of things? And so for anyone that's kind of going through these different aspects, and if life is getting really trippy, it's because this is the grounding activation. This is the one that really brings it all together. And that's why the mountain of faith and trust is so juicy with it. It's so aligned with it. It's like the perfect feeling and experience that you have, is because it's like, you know, that it's unshakable. And that's why I think this one takes a little bit more time, or at least it took me a little bit of time. Yeah, I feel pretty complete in that. So, if there are no questions, I will wrap this one up with a prayer. May the fruit of knowledge offer a seed, and in that seed may love, will, and intuition give life and nourishment. For a tree shall grow, and in its shade may you find peace, and offer peace to all whom ask. Namaste. I think I'll be talking about some of these more trippy experiences. You know, I can talk about my ayahuasca experiences, and I did mention that one today in terms of the salvia experience, so maybe I'll talk about that one too. But we shall see. I'll marinate in it, but I'm off, and I'll see you guys Sunday, and just know that I love you. You're not alone in this journey, and it's one of the reasons why I feel called to put this stuff out there, get a little bit more peek at my experience, what I've gone through, and also simply to let everyone know that we're all going through it. We've all been through it. So, love you. Peace.